if you're looking for the best music production laptop in 2024, you found the perfect video. I'm going to walk you through from the budget category all the way up to the high-end laptops that I recommend, what workflows you can anticipate being capable of for each of the different levels. I keep it from simple to complicated to complex, meaning inputs, microphones, instruments, synthesizers. I'll talk through what each setup will most likely be capable of, and I will teach you about the specs and how they relate to your music production workflow so you can make a qualified purchase decision of your device for music production here in 2024. Now, first and foremost, I'm going to get into explaining the specs of the laptops and what I recommend. Then we'll get into the recommendations of each laptop. If you're curious at any point during the video about the pricing of each of the laptops, the live pricing, head down in the description below and click those links. If you make a purchase, I'll get a small commission, but at no extra cost to you. Now, last housekeeping item before we jump into this, I have selected the laptops I would purchase with my own money. Okay, first and foremost, let's talk about the CPU, the central processing unit. This is responsible as the brain of the computer of sending the tasks to the different parts of the device, whether it needs RAM or it needs more GPU for your workflow. The CPU is the brain of the device, and therefore it handles tasks from a single core, singular tasks standpoint to a multi-core and multitasking standpoint. Some devices are better at single core processing or better at multi-core processing than others. And when it comes to music production, your needs may vary depending on the task that you're doing or the software you're using. First and foremost, high single core performance is a top priority for most DAW. Okay, so most music production is going to really need a high single core performance, which is great because most devices on the market and the ones that I'm going to recommend have great single core performance. It's the multi-core performance that is usually not as prevalent on most devices until you get into the high, more than $2,000 category. The reason for this is sequential or serial processing. It is not possible to parallel process instruments and effects that are on the same channel, right? You have one channel or one track that is, you have maybe multiple effects on, or you're running voice and an instrument through at the same time, whatever you might have. Every channel needs to be processed. Every time it's processing a channel, the other channel has to wait for that channel to finish processing before the other one can then be processed. And so if you don't have high single core performance, you'll end up getting a laggy system because it's falling behind, okay? Multi-core performance can help, but if one worker or say core gets backed up, then the system will slow down. Right? So when it comes to having multiple cores in a system, let's say, for instance, you have the Lenovo Legion Pro 7i, right? That has a 24-core processor. So that would be a really great CPU for music production. However, it's kind of a loud laptop. So that would be really good because each core can then focus on a channel. Now, even if you're utilizing multiple cores or parallel processing, your system could still bottleneck and lack efficiency. First and foremost, what you want to know is the high single core performance is top priority when using a music production laptop. So that's what we want to be looking at. Now here are the laptops with the highest single core performance. We have the i9-14900HX and the i9-13900H, and then they kind of work their way down. We have the Apple M2 and M3 Max and Pro chipsets, and then we work our way down to the Intel Core 7 155H and Core 9 185H. These are considered ultra low power processors because they have the ability to dip into something called LPE cores. And so what that provides you with is really good battery efficiency. But then when you turn up the heat and you need really fast processing, they also have the ability to get peak single speed performance. These new Intel Core Ultra chips are very advantageous on both battery efficiency and on high single core performance, which is really nice. From there, we get into some of the Ryzen CPUs, and then we work our way down just into older generation CPUs. But this is a kind of a list from highest to, still pretty high, but the lower on the list for single core performance. Now, random access memory. Now, this is very important because every time you open an application, you are going to be pulling from the RAM, the random access memory. Basically, this is your system's temporary memory that it's using to open and close programs, it's using to run the programs, and every time you open, it will be taking from your RAM. That is why my recommendation is 16 gigs at a minimum. I think 16 gigs for music production at a minimum. Most PCs are going to use a half a gig to a gig just to boot the PC. Then you turn on something like Ableton Live, Pro Tools, or FL Studio, and using anywhere from 3 to 8 gigs of RAM. Easy. If you're taking it easy, it can easily use that amount of RAM. Then you open Google Chrome, right? Because you're doing research or web browsing, and you're using 2 gigs to 5 gigs. And then let's say you open Spotify, you open Apple Music, or you open whatever. You're then consuming a lot of RAM. And you can see 8 can get eaten up very quickly. And that's why 16 is a base recommendation. I think that is the requirement. The optimal, to me, would be 32. And a lot of the systems are starting to come with 32 gigs of RAM at a base level, so that can be advantageous to you. So without sufficient RAM, your apps may freeze or flat out crash. And while you're in the middle of a music production, you would be aghast if your system crashed in the middle of a great recording session. So definitely important to have a lot of RAM in your system. Now, GPU. Do you need a graphics processing unit for music production? Sometimes. The weird thing is I hate how it's named graphics processing unit. It just is, it's kind of inaccurately named on what it does. It does a lot of video encoding. It does a lot of hyper encoding. It's able to encode a lot of graphical information, bits of information, faster than a CPU. So though a lot of systems will run these graphical tasks or tasks with high bits on a CPU, if you have a GPU, the CPU will send that information to the GPU and the GPU will process it faster. So although there's no graphics being processed in a lot of these music production softwares and a lot of the DAW softwares, it can still benefit from a GPU. Another note would be if you want to run multiple external monitors at the same time, you're going to need a dedicated GPU to do that and offload that system stress onto the GPU to leave your CPU available for processing the actual production. So keep that in mind. Basically everything comes with SSD these days, especially on laptops, but just for educational purposes, an SSD is like a big thumb drive. Everything is stored directly onto that cell, the memory cell, so to speak, versus an HDD, which is a disk, a hard disk drive, which has a spinning disk, an arm, and an eye to read the information off of that spinning disk. So I have the analogy of imagine that you have a thesaurus or a dictionary and you want to look up a word. And so I have to get up, walk over to my bookshelf, pull it down, find the word, and then identify its definition. Versus my phone, I can simply search for the word and Google will immediately populate me with that answer. So the information is found a lot quicker. SSDs are a lot faster than standard older technology of a hard disk drive. Solid state drive versus hard disk drive. So solid state is going to be the de facto nowadays, and they're going to be faster and more reliable. All right, now let's discuss your workflow. Your workflow specifically, what do you have? Are you having, 1 to 2 instruments, 1 mic, 2 mics, different effects, virtual instruments? What do you got going on? As we go through these next few slides with the computer recommendations, we're going to start off in simple workflows, then go to complicated, then complex. A simple workflow is 1 to 2 mics, some reverb, and a virtual instrument. These would be totally doable on some thin and light Ultrabooks, and even a MacBook Air M2. I love my MacBook Air M2, works really well. Or now the MacBook Air M3, equally good, but honestly the M2 would be plenty of performance if you can find one of those pre-owned or on sale. The MacBook Air M2 would be a great fit for simple workflows. More complicated would be 2 to 4 mics, reverb, synth, effects, and even 3 to 5 virtual instruments. That would be something more on the complicated end of things. That would be, a basic gaming laptop. It's going to have a little bit of a noisy fan, so keep in mind that you might want to move that system away from your recording area. Or a MacBook Pro, even an M1 Pro. So from a couple of years ago, that would still be great for a complicated workflow. Now up to, say, an M3 Pro. Now, if we're going to get into complex productions, this would be 5 mics or more, reverb, synth, effects, and 5+ virtual instruments. This will be a more expensive gaming laptop with a higher single-core performance CPU. It will have a GPU to handle some of those more complicated offloadings, but it's going to be a lot noisier, so you're definitely going to want to keep that out of your space. And then also this will be something like an M3 Pro and M3 Max. So if you're on kind of the lower end of that, you can still go with the Pro, but I would move up towards the Max as it will allow you to have better performance without pushing the system so hard that you start to kick on those fans. Keep that in mind as we're going through and checking things out. Again, if you want to check the live pricing, because I'll have the estimated pricing on the slides, but if you want to check the live pricing, use the links in the description below. If you do make a purchase, I'll get a small commission. Thank you. Super helpful to keep this channel alive and the helpful content coming your way. If you choose to use those links, I very much appreciate it. Okay, first and foremost, we're going to start out at what I would consider one of the most affordable laptops you want to pursue, which would be the HP Pavilion laptop. This is around $600 on sale right now. Has a Ryzen 5 7730U, 16 gigs of RAM, 512 SSD, and isn't very color accurate, which does not matter because unless you're, doing your album cover or taking photography and stuff, music production, you don't need that color accurate display. So that's a great starting point. So get you ceiling with the RAM, get you a good CPU, and it'll be great for the simple workflow. Another great laptop for simple workflow is going to be the Asus VivoBook 16. Going to have a nice size screen, a solid CPU, 12 gigs of RAM, so not as much RAM, but 12 gigs of RAM, but you might be able to find this one on a slightly better price point compared to the HP Pavilion. I know some people that prefer Asus over HP. I'm pretty unbiased between HP and Asus. I think they both make solid devices. Next up will be the Lenovo Yoga. This is a really cool device. Right here, this is actually the 9, but it's almost the exact same chassis, outside of the fact that the 9i has this really fancy bar that's a speaker. And so it has a little bit better of audio experience. If you want to go for a little bit better audio from your laptop, although who in music production is using the laptop speakers to listen to their music, you wear super good quality headphones or have desktop speakers that blow your mind. But if you so wanted to have a decent speaker on your laptop, I would recommend checking out the 9i version. But the 7i is a good price point with the Ultra 7, so great high single core performance that you need for processing. You're going to have the Intel graphics on that because it is going to be the 155U, not the 155H. So it's not going to have the Intel Arc graphics. A little deep, too deep. We won't dive into that now, but just know that this is still a good single core performance. 16 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte of SSD. So you're going to have a bit more storage of that device. Acer Swift X14. This is going to be the first laptop in the lineup with a dedicated GPU. So if you are interested in hooking up multiple monitors to your system, this would be a great entry point. It's around $1,200-ish, sometimes up to $1,600, depending on the GPU that it comes with. I've seen some of the RTX 4050. The latest one comes up to the RTX 4070. You really don't need that 4070. The 4050 would be fine. So just keep that in mind. I'll link that up below so you can check it out, of course. Now, these come with 16 gigs or up to 32 gigs as well. If you want really great ceiling, you're not worried about bottlenecking on the RAM side of things, I would go for the 32. And so that laptop would be a great choice. The MSI Prestige 13 OLED, really great price point for the spec. You get the Intel Core Ultra 7 155H, which provides you with the Intel Arc graphics, which would be nice so you don't need a dedicated GPU because dedicated GPU will tend to produce a little bit more fan noise. With the MSI Prestige 13, it'll be a little bit less fan noise. So keep that in mind. But it has 32 gigs of RAM and it has a 1 terabyte SSD. So that on this whole list would be like probably my top recommendation because it's got the RAM, it's got the CPU with high single core, and it doesn't have the dedicated GPU. So if you don't need like 4 external monitors, if you're just gonna do like 1 or maybe 2, that would be a great fit for the device. If you want to take it up a notch with a 16-inch panel, the MSI Prestige 16 AI OLED is a great one, and it has a dedicated GPU. So if you're running multiple monitors, say three monitors, I mean, I have 4 for my setup, but I use a desktop PC for all my editing. This is a great device. More powerful single core performance, still has 32 gigs of RAM and a 1 terabyte SSD. So great pick. If you're wanting to be kind of bang for buck, we're going to get into some gaming laptops here in this section. So these are going to be the best bang for buck for gaming laptops. They're going to give you optimal performance. You're not going to have any issues really with lagginess, but you're going to sacrifice some of that quietness for performance, as I mentioned earlier. Right off the bat, we have the HP Omen here in the stack. Actually a pretty thin and light device compared to a lot of the thicker gaming laptops. Nice big 16-inch screen. Also, the Victus is more of your like bang for buck option, which would be great. These can be down to like $799 all the way up to $2,199. Obviously, the complicated workflow is going to flow towards more of the HP Victus with the $899 to around $1,200. Complicated workflow. And then as you move into like the roughly $1,599 up to the $2,199 models, that's when you'll be able to handle the complicated workflows. You'll have an RTX 4070, then i9 14900HX, plenty of performance, a really great option. The next on the lineup is by far one of my favorite laptops from the Legion series from 2023 and even moving into 2024. That's going to be the Slim 5, the 14-inch and the 16-inch model. They are a great price point. They have great performance. The 14-inch has a dear spot to my heart because I love 14-inch devices and it has a lot of performance. It is a very well optimized device, and so that's one of my favorite, like kind of on the go yet powerhouse devices would be the Slim 5, and it's a great price point. It's kind of hard to find them. They're really not set. They've kind of sold out. So I'll link up if I can below, and hopefully, fingers crossed, you can find one of those devices because they're a great find. Awesome price point, really like it. Legion Pro 5 or the 5i. Pro 5 did not come back this year as a Ryzen device. It's only in the 5i as of this moment. So you can only get the Pro 5 in an i, which would be Intel. Ryzen is from last year's model and before, so they've kind of moved away from Ryzen and moved towards Intel for the Legion setups. But de facto, one of the best bang for bucks as well, in line with the Slim series. Those Slim and the Pro are honestly so close in spec that the Pro just gives you like a few little fancies like RGB, multi-zone, and all that stuff, so you really don't need it. This has become my de facto go-to laptop. This is the Apple MacBook Air M2 15. Personally, I do a lot of video editing, so this thing can handle 6K video editing on the go, has great battery life, is completely silent. It would make a fantastic, simple to complicated workflow device. Really, really great. I would lean more towards the simple just so you don't overpower it. Mine has 8 gigs of RAM. If you're going to move more towards the complicated workflow, I'd go with 16, absolutely hands down, because you will bottleneck the system at 8 gigs of RAM. Just keep that in mind. Next up on the lineup is the HP Spectre 2-in-1. I have one right here. This is a great device. If you're not only into music production, but you're also a digital artist, it comes with a pen, has a touch screen. It's a 2-in-1 laptop, so it folds completely over. Comes with a couple options. You can get it with a dedicated RTX 4050 if you're going to be doing multiple monitors, or you can get it with integrated graphics if you don't want to do multiple monitors. The model here has a really nice large trackpad, so it's a great on-the-go friendly device. Nice and thin, but still gives you a large screen. So definitely recommend that device. The HP Spectre is a great build quality. It's superb. The next up on the lineup is going to be the X16 and the X13. Another one of my favorite devices. The 13 is definitely the on-the-go friendly one. Magnesium alloy chassis, super durable, really professional, beautiful looking laptop. They have a soft spot. I have a soft spot in my heart for these devices. They're powerhouse devices, but they're really on-the-go friendly. They're absolutely fantastic. You can get it in a 13-inch model or a 16-inch model, depending on the size that you need. Both have really good single-core performance and dedicated GPUs, but you can also get the 13-inch in just simply a Ryzen 9 7940HS without a dedicated GPU, and that'll save you half. So about $1,249 for this device versus $2,499 for the device. So keep that in mind that if you want to save a little money, you can skip the dedicated GPU, but that means that I would recommend this for more of the complicated workflow, simple to complicated. It's only considered complex workflow if you get the RTX 4070 in that device, so keep that in mind. Next up will be the HP Omen 14 OLED. This is probably one of the coolest gaming laptops, 14-inch gaming laptops, from 2024. The keyboard deck on this laptop is beautiful. I mean, look at that. It's just so bright. I love how the keys really glow on this device. It's thin. It's got a dedicated GPU, OLED display, great performance, 32 gigs of RAM. If you get the RTX 4070 version, if you get the 4060 version, you'll get 16 gigs of RAM. Keep that in mind. So honestly, just an awesome device, really beautiful, and so compact, so on-the-go friendly. A device I've waited for probably over 2 years. This is the PX13. This device has never existed. The P16, on the other hand, existed previously in the ProArt StudioBook Pro 16 OLED. These are both brand new redesigns. The 13 is a little powerhouse. I have the 4050 version here. It comes up to a 4070. Fingers crossed that I'm going to get the 4070 as well so I can benchmark it and test it. But by far, an awesome device. I've been using it for about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks now. I've edited some video on it, and it's just really comfortable to use. It's got a great screen. The keyboard deck is nicely laid out. It's a great form factor, fits easily in my backpack, easy to carry, light, thin. And it also has the dial on the trackpad. So you can program that dial to, scroll through your timeline or turn instruments up or down, or these can be programmed to really anything you want. And it adds to the advantage of having quick shortcuts on the device. So I have full dedicated reviews of most of the devices on this video. You can go over to my channel and view them, or I'll link them up in the YouTube cards or the end cards. But this, I'm gonna have tons of content on. Next would be the MacBook Pro 14 and 16. These are the M3 Pro and the M3 Max. To me, if you are a Mac OS user and you're like thinking, I need to get as much performance as possible, it's a no-brainer that the M3 Max would be a great music production laptop if you have the budget. A lot of times people end up choosing Windows laptops because they want more performance for less money. But in my opinion, if you want a silent device that has lots of performance and is very reliable, has really great build quality, you can't go wrong with the Apple MacBook Pro lineup. I will not argue with somebody if they say, well, I think Macs are the best for music production. I'll say, yeah, they have everything going for them. They have great battery life, they have great performance, they have great build quality. And the only thing they don't have going for them is that they're more expensive than their equal and counterpart performance Windows versions. However, the Windows versions are maybe never going to get as good a battery life. Good heavens. If Windows doesn't get their act together on battery life, I am going to just spit on the floor, on my carpeted office floor. That's how I feel about it. But yeah, great picks. Couldn't recommend those more. Next up is the Legion Pro 9i. Love this device because it has the build quality of the Yoga series, with the performance of the Lenovo Legion Slim. This has a maximum graphics power, I think 100 watts, which makes this laptop not bottleneck its performance. So this is a really great in regards to performance laptop. It's a great price point. It's a great build quality. It can get 32 to even up to 64 gigs of RAM, depending on the country you're in, and in RTX 4070, depending on the country you're in. If you're in the US, unfortunately, all we have is the 4060 version. Amazing display quality, great performance, great keyboard layout. It's got aluminum chassis, big trackpad. It's a great choice. I really like this. If you want more of like a premium Legion laptop, go for the Yoga Pro 9i. It's great. Next up on the lineup is going to be the Zephyrus series, the G14 and the G16. Great devices as well. You're going to see a lot of similarities carrying over between the G16 and the P16, as well as the G14 and the PX13. Very similar chassis designs between these devices. Very thin, very light. You might be able to find a slightly better deal on the G14 because it's been out longer, and the G16 because it's been out longer. You're not going to have the dial or the simple design aesthetic, but you're going to have about 80% of the device by choosing the Zephyrus series when in relation to the Asus ProArt. So just keep that in mind. Great CPU in the G14, super efficient, but then also you have access to that dedicated GPU. Great price point. I've seen these on sale for excellent prices. I'll be linking those up. I would say if I could pick a bang for buck out of all these devices in the lineup, I would say I would choose the Slim from Legion or the Zephyrus G14. Definitely the best bang for buck. Then if I wanted like a silent laptop, I would obviously go for like the MacBook Air 15. Windows laptop best bang for buck would be either the Asus VivoBook 16 or the MSI Prestige 13. Just kind of tuning you in on kind of where my mind's at. Next on the lineup is going to be the Lenovo Legion 7i. The Lenovo Legion Pro 7i is a bit thick, bit chunky. I consider the Legion 7i to be the Lenovo Legion equivalent to something like the G16. Okay, so it's going to be thin, light, going to have great performance, but it's going to, it's not going to have all the thick chunkiness of the Pro 7i. Still has great performance. i9-14900HX, super powerful processor. RTX 4070 GPU for multiple monitors and for extra processing, and then 32 gigs of RAM. So it's a great option for somebody looking for performance but doesn't want to get too thick of a laptop. Okay, if you're looking for thin premium laptop, I would check out the Galaxy Book 4 Pro 360. However, though this is in the complex workflows is referencing the Ultra. Let me start with the Book 4 Pro 360. This is something in the complicated workflows category. It's not going to have a dedicated GPU. It's going to be the Intel Core 7 155H with ARC integrated graphics and 16 gigs of RAM. Okay, so that's going to be more complicated and simple and complicated workflows. If you're somebody who wants the premium laptop that is capable of complex workflows, you should get the Ultra, Galaxy Book 4 Ultra from Samsung. It's going to be the Intel Core Ultra 9 RTX 4070. Recommend the 4070, not the 4060, because the 4070 comes with the 32 gigs of RAM. That is important for complex workflows. Okay, this is going to be one of my top recommendations. Thin and light, amazing CPU in regards to performance. Great single core performance, but also great efficiency. You're going to have a dedicated GPU, 32 or 64 gigs of RAM, and 1 terabyte or 2 terabytes of storage. You're gonna have the OLED display, a large trackpad, the dial that you can program yourself for ultimate efficiency, upward facing speakers if you happen to listen to your music on the speakers, and just a laptop that was built with creators first in mind. But I mean, it's so thin and light. It's a great, well-designed device. Can't wait to do even more testing on this device. I've already done a lot of my initial testing, and it's showing great results in regards to performance. Definitely recommend this for music production. Links are in the description below if you want to check the live pricing or make a purchase. I'd be grateful if you make a purchase. It definitely supports my channel. You can comment below. Perhaps myself or somebody in the community can help guide you along, maybe get a more specific answer for you. But my goal of this video is that you be educated to make your own buying decision. That's why I had the whole intro part explaining the specs, catching you up to speed on what everything means. You can click or tap the screen here to get more in-depth reviews, or go over to my channel and find more in-depth reviews of a specific device that you want to know a little bit more about. I've most likely covered it. I'll see you guys in the next video.